Yesterday, I did a video on defilement and contagion in the Bible, and it looks like someone may have misunderstood some of the comments that I made, that God has the ability to move your children to have a relationship with you. Well, here's the thing. He definitely has the ability to move your children to have a relationship with you if you're dealing with your sin. You were given authority over your child, not the other way around. Do not misrepresent what I'm saying, and do not misrepresent what the word has said. You have been given authority over your children. If your children are slandering you, or they are committing evil, they're dishonoring you, you have to go deal with your sin, the plank in your eye, so that you can then help others to take the speck out of theirs. I want you to remember the story of Eli, and that God, when Eli's sons who were working at the temple were sleeping with the women and they were threatening people who were bringing the sacrifices, God said to Samuel that he was going to destroy Eli's house, which included Eli. Eli was not separate from that. I don't understand where people are coming from who think that you are going to be saved while your house remains a ruin. What are you thinking? How does that line up with the Bible, guys? The word says that you will never serve in God's house if you have not managed your own house well. The Bible gives us examples like Eli, who will never serve in God's house because he was not managing his own house well. That is why Eli and his family were destroyed, because Eli did not manage his own house. What I have said in these videos is not a cosign of parents who have discord with their children. It's quite the opposite. God did not place that child over you. He placed you over that child. You have sin to go deal with. And when you deal with that sin, God has the ability to move you back into harmony with your children. Do not misrepresent what I have said. I have not said that your rotten children are going to return to you. Come on. What I have said is you need to go deal with your sin, and God has the ability to heal your house. You deal with your sin, you examine yourself, you acknowledge it before God, you receive his ministry, and then you bear the fruit of change, and you ask God to move you to walk correctly in the authority you've been given, because obviously you have not. Don't think for a second that I look at the fruit and I say, oh, I'm so sorry that your kids that God gave you are so rotten. That you can go into a whole story about what your kids have done to you, and then I'm going to go along with that narrative, because I'm not. I know the word, and I do this work. If your family is bearing the fruit of being broken, that's because of you. It's not because of your children. They don't have the ability to raise themselves. Raise up a child in the way they should go. When they're old, they will not depart from it. And you know how you raise up your children? You walk in the authority that God has given you, and you walk in the roles and responsibilities that God has given you, and you do it correctly, and they learn by your example. So you now slander your child and complain about your child slandering you. Come on, guys. You could not pay me enough to go and start slandering my kid and telling people about all of the evils that she has done. Come on. I love my daughter, and I take responsibility for the role that I have with her and the relationship that I have with her. And if that relationship is breached to where I don't have any influence in her life, then I need to go and heal some things with God and own up to who I've been and why our relationship is that way. Why my daughter does not respect me. Matthew 10 verse 34. Do not suppose that I've come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Notice that it goes in a certain direction, guys. A man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be the members of his own household. It does not say a father against his son, a mother against her daughter, or a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law. You know why? Because I will never give up on my kids. ever. Not my son-in-law, who is not my blood, but is my son through marriage. He's my son. I will never give up on my kids. That is my job. But your children can be turned against you. You know why? Because they don't have authority over you. How are you going to reject the responsibilities that God gave you? Or go and talk behind their back? Don't talk to me about that. I'm not your therapist. You want someone who's going to co-sign your sin? Go to a therapist, because this is not the place. Now listen to what he says in verse 37. Anyone who loves their father or mother is not more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. You can't love anything more than God. Everything else has to be set second. But my concern is that people are using this as an opportunity to justify their broken homes, the homes over which God placed them. God did not place a daughter-in-law over her mother-in-law, or a daughter over her mother, or a son over his father. It is the father, the mother, and the mother-in-law who are responsible for their households. I will never give up on my kids, ever. And what that means is that I will deal with my sin, and I will pray for them, and I will fast for them, and I will never give up on them, because that is the responsibility that God gave me. Isaiah 58, 6-8. Is not this the kind of fasting I've chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see the naked to clothe them, and to not turn away from your own flesh and blood? What's that have to do with a fast, guys? You stand in the gap for those you think are walking in darkness, particularly your own children. Take responsibility. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. That is what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying. When you start dealing with your own sin, God is going to bring you into harmony with your children. No, God is not just going to say, oh yeah, you've been a rotten child, go return to your parents. There's a reason you're in that position, and you need to take responsibility for it. You don't go drop your kid off at therapy to be fixed, or go and tell everybody about your rotten kid to justify yourself. I do not buy into that. Don't even try it with me. If your home is broken, I'm going to look at you and ask you, why is your home broken? What do you need to be doing right now? Do you understand that this is your covenant, that God has said that if you cannot manage your own house, you will never serve in his, and that it is a requirement for you to serve in his? That's what it means to be a priest of God, sons of God. How are you going to be a priest of God and serve in his house when your own house is not in order? That's what the word says. It's not asking you if you want to be a pastor in some counterfeit church. What it's saying is, you want to be a priest of God, holy and blessed in the first resurrection, then your house needs to be in order, or you can't serve there. And that is required of every single person who wants to be a priest of God. Do you understand that every single person who goes up in the first resurrection is referred to as holy and blessed, and will be priests of God and reign with him for 1,000 years? I can't spell this out any clearer. How can you be saved if you don't understand these things, if you don't take responsibility for these things? What I'm not telling you is to go out and try to live your child's covenant for them. And God corrected me, recently in the last couple days, because one of my children was sick and we had plans to spend time together, and I didn't want our family to be separated. And so I didn't do what God has said, which is to say, well, you're sick, you need to go spend some time in isolation, and we can get together another time. I didn't do that. I justified it by a counterfeit narrative that, well, I'm mom, so I can take care of my babies. And I thought that was good. And guess what? It's not. Unless your children are still children, your grown children need to go isolate when they're sick. I need to go isolate when I'm sick. I need to go return to God because I've defiled myself. and I need to be restored in him, and I need to let him deal with me. So what I did was I stepped into idolatry and called that good. It's not good. My son needed to isolate. My daughter needed to deal with whatever it is that she had to deal with, in maybe even in the disappointment of not being able to spend that time together. Who knows? It's not my job to know. I'm just using these examples to help you to understand that you got to give your children space to experience their own consequences. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to give up on them. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to look for opportunities to have conversations about what I'm learning and what they're learning in Christ. And it certainly doesn't mean that I'm going to separate them as being evil and me being good. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with my own plank so that I can help them to remove the speck from their eye. And all of us are learning alongside each other. There are no parents who are so righteous that they can't learn from their kids. That's ridiculous, especially when Jesus said to become like a child. How can we be so arrogant to not learn from our own children? Please don't misunderstand anything that I have said about this. I'm not speaking on my own authority. I'm speaking on the authority of the word. And I have also not said that I'm perfect. I'm sharing my sin with you right now as an offering so that you can learn too. And that is how you are to engage with your children. You're not to act like you're the perfect one and they're the rotten one, or there will never be trust in your relationship. Please discern this message with God.